Hello, welcome to today's episode of Something Completely Different with Len Wilson. I am Len Wilson, and we are so excited you joined us here on today's episode. This is episode 4. Last week we had some ice issues here locally in the North Dallas area, but that is all cleared up, and we are back, and I am super excited about today's show. Today's show is all about potential and possibility, fun topics. How do you unleash it in yourself? How do you unleash it in others? And this is related to our title of our show, Something Completely Different. Let me explain that for just a minute. The show name, if you have not heard before, the show Something Completely Different is a reference to Christ's new creation, which is not just the end of time, but an entirely different world that's actually already existing now for those of us who follow Jesus. And one of our main goals with this show is to talk about what life is like in the new creation and what it means to pray and work for, as Jesus says, kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. And the new creation life is meant to be beautiful. People often assume that Christianity is about punishment and suffering and self-loathing, but Jesus actually says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. That's a verse from Gospel of John 10:10. One of my favorite verses. I know one of our invite authors, Arthur Jones, his favorite verse also, John 10:10. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. See, the negative view of Christianity is all wrong. I mean, it's based on retribution for things we've done wrong, but Jesus doesn't preach eye for an eye. He talks about a radical new concept called grace, because he wants us to have beautiful, rich, abundant lives. And here's the thing. We've each been given the means for this to happen. So we are God's handiwork, his poem, the highest and best of creation, which means each of us already has a set of gifts built in. And part of living life to the fullest is learning to use our own gifts well and to help unleash the gifts of others. We like to say here at Invite and at our parent church, St. Andrew, that everybody has a genius, maybe more than one. You know, there's so much attention right now about mental health, about healing and wholeness. And I think part of the problem is we're facing this epidemic of disconnection. We don't know who we are, and we don't know the gifts we've been given. So today, this show about unleashing potential is about helping find your genius and helping others to find their genius as well. One of the things I love to talk about is how can we make others a star? How do you help others live out their potential? Our guest today is all about this. Our guest today is Forrest Pool. He is the Chief Strategy and Communications Officer at St. Andrew, and he and I have been colleagues in ministry for several years. St. Andrew's the church that is behind the launch of Invite Resources, and one of Forrest's geniuses is helping other people to find their genius and to unleash their potential. So we're going to spend some time here on that topic. But before we get to the main event, I want to start off with a little bit of fun. Forrest, are you there? Let's get Forrest on. There he is. Forrest, how's it going, man?
Hey, how's it going, Len? Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here today. For those of you who don't know Forrest, Forrest is known around the offices at St. Andrew as being the king of dad jokes. Is that true? Would you agree with that, Forrest?
I'm told that. I don't buy into it.
Well, it's a long-standing reputation. And so I was thinking before today that as we have you on the show, that I can't have you on and not have a little fun with that. So, I am quietly my own king of dad jokes, apparently around the Wilson household. But this reputation is not nearly as extensive as yours.
You don't have much competition there, though, do you?
That's right. Kind of a default title, I guess.
Right.
Oh man, you just kind of blew my bubble. I thought I was actually pretty good at it. So I thought you'd come on and we would start off with a little dad joke off. Let's tell each other a few dad jokes, and I'm gonna see if I can make you laugh, and maybe you can see if you can make me laugh. So
is the rule I'm trying not to laugh at these?
Yes, yeah. Try not to laugh. I know it's gonna be hard, but these jokes of mine that I'm bringing you. So let's just kind of alternate. Give a few jokes and lighten things up before we get into our topic for the day. So I'll start. You ready?
All right, let's do this.
All right. What did Yoda say when he saw himself in 4K?
I don't know what.
HDMI.
What do you call
They didn't even get like a response. I mean,
I thought that was what we were doing. I thought that was
okay. All right. Okay. I got
right.
This is not going to be easy. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay.
All right. What do you call a French man wearing sandals?
I don't know.
Felipe Flop.
Okay. Yep. All right. That. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, do you know I wrote a song about a tortilla?
No.
It's actually more of a rap.
Okay. No. Bad news. The other day I found out I'm colorblind. Honestly, the news just came right out of the purple.
Do you know I'm actually colorblind? So that's like doubly not funny. It's okay though. I'm not offended. All right. So, do you know of Post Malone, right?
Yeah.
You ever heard of Ho Malone?
Yeah.
It's a classic Christmas movie starring Macaulay Culkin.
Right.
That was the joke.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead.
So after dinner yesterday, my wife asked if I could clear the table. I needed a running start, but I made it.
Good. It's good. I was in a band in high school. We called ourselves Duvet. We only did covers.
That's funny. I think you were really in a band in high school, weren't you?
I was. We didn't call ourselves Duvet though.
No. So my wife and I recently decided to not have kids.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. The kids are taking it pretty badly.
I imagine they would. In school, I was only taught 25 letters of the alphabet. I don't know why.
It was average.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yesterday, I was washing the car with my son, and he said, "Dad, can you just use a sponge?"
Okay, you got me on that one. That was good. It took me a second, but yeah. You're from Denison, Texas, right? Everybody kind of knows this. Who knows you?
God's country.
So, kind of a country town a little bit. So I was thinking as your boys grow older that you want to make sure your sons know how to get a farm girl to marry him. First, a tractor.
Okay. So, you know what you call somebody that tells dad jokes that doesn't have a kid?
What?
A faux pas.
That's nice. Good one. Appreciate that. I kept wondering why the ball was getting better and bigger. Then it hit me.
That was pretty good. How many more of these do you have? Because
I could keep going.
I'm out of the ones I've sent in, but hey, you know what sound a Spanish owl makes?
What's that?
Quien.
I don't even get that one.
That's Spanish for who.
Oh, okay. All right. So it sounds like you're about out. I'll give you one more. This is since this is a Christian show, I threw this one in. So what did Peter say to James and John after they fished all night and didn't catch anything?
I don't know what.
Time to Netflix and chill.
I like it.
All right, man. Good one. Thanks for the dad joke off. I will say you are the winner because you made me laugh, and I just made you slightly chuckle once. So, so good job.
I will say, I'm more of a situational comedy guy, a situational dad joke guy. So that was those weren't all originals, but all those comics have stolen from me so much over the years. I feel like, it's
okay. Great artist steal. Yeah, absolutely. No requirement that your stuff be original. All right, so let's talk about potential. Clearly, your potential is dad jokes. My potential is other stuff. But so you are known for this concept. In fact, our mutual friend and colleague Arthur Jones at St. Andrew, who's an invite author, has said that your gift is unleashing potential in others. So I'm just curious, did you like pop out of the womb with this gift, or I mean, how did this come to be in you?
Well, what's funny? So I don't know if you've ever heard of Enneagram. I
Yeah.
I'm not a big. Sorry, I'm shaking everything. I'm not a big believer in all the personality stuff. I like it, but but whenever I read, we did that with our staff about a year and a half back, and I saw they read what a 7 on Enneagram is. And to your question, I didn't know if I came out of the womb like this, but apparently I did, because they read what a 7 is, and it's somebody that it nailed me. It's somebody that sees the upside. There's a situation, and I twist it all for the positive. Like, I'll live way above the line. So I guess there's a little bit of that.
Yeah, I love that. You're a 7 to a T. If you don't know Enneagram, for those of you who are dialing in today, totally encourage you to check it out. We have found it here around the offices to be very helpful. I'm a 5. I tend to reflect and think about stuff. Forrest is totally a 7. He's Mr. Enthusiasm.
What's really interesting is, those personality tests. Every time I sometimes go around the world, like walk around about my day, thinking everybody thinks like I do. And so when I see people that are down or processing stuff, and those tests help me get out of myself and realize that everybody doesn't walk around with my thoughts in my head. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. So I was kind of thinking about this topic, knowing ahead of today, that we were going to talk about it, and I was thinking, like, learning to live out of gifts partly means knowing that you have gifts yourself, and which is kind of freeing, because I think when I was young, just speaking for myself, it felt like that for a lot of years I didn't know quite how to apply my gifts. Like, I knew I had gifts. I knew God had given me stuff, but it was kind of vague. I knew I had a brain, but I had no idea what to do with it. But often what happens is, when I was younger, I would tend to want to kind of fake it till I make it. In fact, you hear that advice, right? So when you're coming up and you're in your 20s and you're kind of figuring out how to do it, I was thinking that can actually be bad advice. And what do you think about that when people talk about faking it until they make it? You ever heard that phrase?
Yeah. So it's interesting you say that. When I look back at my life, one of my big regrets is, because you talk about gifts, I think a lot of times people tell us what our gifts are, but those aren't always necessarily what I feel like is inside of us. They're not. There's a difference between talents and all that. So, like, to me, there's things I'm good at, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what I want to do and that gives me life and all that. And sometimes whenever you do things that you're good at, people reinforce it, and then all of a sudden you start down some path, and then you end up kind of living into what that is. And I think through, like, growing up in high school, my middle school, high school, all that, I was good at certain things, but I think that what happened is, when I look back, when I think of my regrets in my life, I didn't really live my full self. Like, there were things that I wouldn't, I kept suppressed. I worried about what other people thought. There were these aspects of it where I look at certain people that didn't do that, and I envy that. That's something that I see in them that I'm like, wow, I wish I would have had that growing up. I don't know if it would change where I'm at today, but it's something that I look back on. And but yeah, what I'll say is, it made it a lot more complicated to figure out what my true gifts were. It built a lot of stuff on top of it that when you get down and you really have to dig in and figure out what those are, there's a lot more to clean off, and sometimes there's a lot more struggle around it. But yeah, fake it till you make it. I think a lot of times, sometimes you end up making something that you didn't really want to make. You're faking it all the way to over here, and you really, this is the core.
No, I love what you just said about what can happen when you're young and you're not quite sure, even at any age really, and you're not really quite sure what your true gifts are, what you should be doing, but you're getting positive reinforcement for something. And then that could end up becoming, you take that on because you feel validated. You're like, okay, cool, I'm good at this. And you take it on, and then you end up kind of doing something that maybe is not, it's not that it's, completely off from what but it's just not kind of the true sweet spot, right? The true center of what your gifts are. Like,
and not that I think there's anything wrong with validating people's what they do well. I think that's on my side. It's what I accepted, and if that reinforces, okay, I need to keep doing that, versus what is it that truly gives me life.
For me, when I was young, like, I played saxophone in school, And so I was actually
Tell
considering
the
it.
other part of that story. You played saxophone, but what did you have back here to help?
I had a mullet, man. I was
Yeah, that's right.
I was rocking the mullet. Yeah, for sure. Until Kenny G came along, and then I decided I didn't want to play sax anymore. But no, but actually, what changed it for me was when I was in college, because I had enough positive reinforcement. I kind of, maybe deep inside, could have told you that I wasn't. I was kind of a try hard, according to what my son's language, you know,
Right.
and you're not quite, you don't quite have it, but you're really working hard at it. And we went on a college tour around Texas. I went to a little small Methodist school in Abilene in West Texas. And we were in this high school gym in Taylor, Texas, outside of Austin.
Yeah.
And I remember this 15-year-old kid getting up on a tenor sax, and what he did was just, it blew me away. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is true genius. That's true talent. And I'm never, ever going to have that. I kind of knew at that point, you know, I was maybe like 20, 21. And I thought, yeah, I think I need to do something else for a living, because this is not, I don't have that, you know. And it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I would look at it and say that this is me being something's wrong with me. I take every situation and I go, well, what's the positive out of that? Or what could you have gone? You know, I look at it and go, no matter what you do, there's going to be somebody better than you at it. You know, you'll always be able to find somebody better. So you can't, you know, part of it is seeing that girl with the, you know, playing the tenor, that's incredible. And then figuring out, do I want to go there? Can I keep going this direction? Does it give me life? Am I good enough to do this in my own world?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think for me, the shift was when, and this didn't happen until later, when I began to really understand how to live out of my strengths, as opposed to trying to correct my weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense or resonate with you at all? Like, I felt like there was a period of my time when, I was good at stuff, but I was more focused on what I couldn't do. And I saw the gaps and the problems, and I guess I'd kind of beat myself up a little bit, and I'd be like, I got to get better at this perceived weakness. And that really shifted for me about 10 years ago. And I began to realize, no, actually, like, here's the strengths. Let's grow the strengths instead of trying to correct the weaknesses.
My brain can't even, my soul can't go there and focusing on weaknesses and things, that other than identifying them and figuring out what not to invest in, as far as not to feed. But yeah, I look at it, and, you know, I use this mantra often, is whenever I'm talking to people about leadership and managing, is, you know, feed the strengths. Like, you know, you can beat up on the weaknesses all day. I also have a phrase that people argue with me about, I'm convinced I'm right, is people aren't stupid. Like, people, you know, you can tell them they sing good. They know they don't sing well. Like, they, you know, like, you can, like, there's things when it really, if you peel back the onion, so there is ignorance. There's things that people just don't know. You know, you know, advanced calculus or whatever. You know, there's things you don't know. Yeah. But or you don't know, you know, how that's supposed to work. But when you know, and when you're not ignorant to something, I'm convinced that when people peel it back far enough, they, you know, get through all the self-awareness stuff, they know. You know, so whenever I'm, you know, my kind of philosophy around leadership is, you know, it's important to address weaknesses, you know, and you know, if there are things where people are, you know, not living up to what they could be, address that and correct it if you need to. But really, I'm so much bigger on feeding the strengths, because I think a lot of times people are much more aware of their weaknesses than they are their strengths. And if you help them understand their strengths and feed it and compliment it and let them know, I think, to me, I've gotten a lot, you know, I've unleashed a lot more potential, I guess. I think that's part of what I focus on.
So you're saying, and this is really interesting. There's both the everybody's got a trophy culture where we tell everybody they're great, and perhaps we're doing them a disservice, because if we tell everybody they're great at everything, then how do you really know what your gifts are, what you're really great at? But at the same time, then you've kind of got this issue where, like, if you've got someone living outside of their sweet spot, and maybe they're really invalidated, and so they need to be told what they're good at, right, at the same time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think honesty around, like, so there's a way to talk. So here, one big thing is, and I don't know if we're going here with this conversation, but one big thing I think in leadership and what I've experienced in my career is there's a difference between being honest with someone about, you know, their performance or how they screwed up, or, you know, a weakness associated with it, versus getting on to them about it, or there's like some kind of reprimand associated with it. And a lot of times I think, like I said, people aren't stupid. They know they screwed up. They know they didn't live up to whatever it was. They'll come out and put up a good face, and they'll sit in the meeting and act like, what do you mean? Like, of course they know. And I think being honest with them and helping them realize what you saw and what you experienced, but then going right to feeding the strength and feeding the hope of what it could be, or, they weren't quite living up to it. I know I've seen you do that different, like, feeding that and helping them focus on the positive side of it versus telling them how bad they did.
So you and I've had this conversation over the years when it comes to kind of management and, working with teams and building up teams. You said something to the effect, like, if someone, say for example, someone's well-trained and they can do the job efficiently, but they're probably never going to be better than maybe a B+ at that job. No matter how you try to help them. And there's a difference between being well-trained and being truly gifted at something.
Right.
And you've said to me before in the past that ultimately you're doing that person a disservice if you're not being honest with them about that. Because if they're trained but not in their sweet spot, and you have a wonderful way of saying it, and I can't remember it. I'm hoping you know what I'm talking about and kind of spit that back at me right now, because it's basically like, if someone's not in that sweet spot, and if you're not honest with them about it, then ultimately they can never get to where they want to go. And part of our job is helping others unleash potential, is to help them see the difference between those two things, right? Like, if you're not in that sweet spot, you're never going to get there where you really want to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And honestly, if someone is at a certain level, you call it a B+, like if you're that, like, there's nothing more frustrating for that person or the leader than expecting them to be performing at this other level that they physically can't do. Like, it's not something that's possible for them. And I think so many times, especially, so I didn't come from the church world. I came from, I was in consulting. I did that for my career, and there's a whole story behind all this, but I came and started working here in the church world about 5 years ago in 2016. Yeah. So 5.5 years or so. It's crazy. But what I noticed, when you get into the church world, or really kind of I think there's some nonprofits that are more kind of the private and corporate environment. But when you really get into the church world, what I found is, and there was somebody before me that actually coined a phrase called Minnesota nice, that it was, and I don't know if she coined the phrase, but she gave it to me.
Yeah.
But she said, you'll be surprised at how in consulting, like, high intensity, everything's driving for $1. You're doing all this work, and people say really blunt things, and it's not, and they'll even go, negative, beat you up about it, but everybody's working for the dollar, and ultimately you get paid to be there and take that, and that's what you go on and do. When you come into an organization that is faith-based, it's a whole different world. Like, you can't, they're not, if anybody's in the church business for the dollar, like, you're probably in the wrong business. If anybody's in the faith-based or nonprofit business to make $1, you're not, there's other places out there you can do a lot better. But that it creates this environment, particularly in leadership and having conversations with people, it's much more complicated, because you're sitting here telling somebody, helping them realize, and actually they already realize it, but you're helping them allow it to be known that they're B+ at this, and there might be a better angle at this, or there might be a better role that they could be an A or an A+, and or maybe a B+ is okay. But just knowing that and understanding that's what we need, and we're not beating ourselves up to keep pressing for this and keep experiencing failure, but you're doing this in an environment where it's not just about money, it's about, everything they believe in, everything that they invested in, and it's way more to it than just, the things that you can put on a quality of work thing out in the public world.
There's a larger culture too, I think, to what you're saying, that's so critical, because an employee can hear what you just said, and they may perhaps they've been in negative and kind of environments in the past that have been kind of destructive or tear people down, and they may hear that cynically, they may hear like, oh, you're just feeding me a line because you think I stink at the job or something. As opposed to what you sincerely are meaning by that, that like you actually can be an A in something. Like we truly believe you have a genius. You're probably not completely aligned, to what that is. And so let's figure out what that is together. So that to me gets to a larger question of kind of a positive, flourishing kind of organizational culture that it helps people to overcome that kind of cynical, kind of thinking. And honestly, that's why we came at the same time to St. Andrew, right? So was I a week ahead of you or a week behind you or something?
Yeah. You're tenured by the time I got here. You've been here about 2 weeks.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as we got to know each other, though, that was one of the things that excited me the most, was because in my experience, many people who were administrative leaders at churches, for some reason, in my experience, tended to have kind of in my probably unkind way to describe this would be that they were kind of bean counters. It was kind of like a negative kind of approach, like don't spend too much money, or kind of watching it. And so this kind of culture of finding your sweet spot, unleashing potential, flourishing, just seems so different and refreshing. And I think that's part of the success that St. Andrew, our church home here, has had these last few years, is because it allows people to think differently about their own skills and their own possibilities.
So I love sports. I use those analogies every once in a while. And so I think I would be a pretty bad owner in the NFL right now, because I would draft, like the way I look at it, I would draft the best player that's coming up, right?
Right.
And I know there's people out there that look at positions and they, and there's a place for that. But honestly, so whenever we just did a kind of a big organizational restructure at St. Andrew, and we looked at, we looked at what the organization should look like. Then we looked at all the incredible people that we have that work there and said, okay, where do they fit? And what's funny is that meant some of them moved out of their current role into a different role. And this happens in corporate America all the time. This is like a yearly thing with most of these big organizations. They restructure and they reorg and they move it around, keep it fresh, all that. But remember, they're going for $1. What we're going for here is way more than that. And you've got people that were hired to do this job, and they're doing the job, and their faith, their life is this job, and it's way more than money. And then you're saying, hey, I've got an opportunity for you to be somewhere else and to do something that I think you're going to be able to enhance more and to grow more. And so anyways, if I was an NFL owner, I would be drafting the best player and then looking at my organization and saying, where can they fit? Where can their talents take us to the next level? And, of course there would be some position players I'd draft, but and so when we took this approach with our team recently, we looked at it and said, where do you fit best? Where can you actually, and what you realize is, when you take a look at it like that, some of them have pigeonholed themselves into a role, and there's nowhere really to go. And, they see, you can change their title or give them a pay raise, but there's nowhere for them to go. But when you take a step back and look at their talents, look at their gifts from God and what they can do to impact this, I think you might see something, and you might be able to. What's crazy though is there's a lot of emotions involved. And if you think about those emotions when you're going through this, and you think about, if I move this person to here, I don't know if they'll be able to work with so-and-so. And I don't know, like when you start doing that, it stops you in your tracks and you can't go anywhere. And so some of it, you just kind of have to.
That's gold to me, Forrest. I love that you said that, because it's people, not positions, right? So if you're looking at an environment, an organization, and you've got, say, in our case, I don't know how many staff, dozens of staff. It doesn't matter. You could have 3 staff. It's the same way. You're structured. So if you say someone leaves, do you have a job description? Do you automatically put that out onto LinkedIn or wherever and find the next one? Or do you think through the gifts and skills of who you have and then kind of rework that? So you just gave a great illustration of how to kind of think in terms of people, not positions.
Right.
What?
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
I was gonna shift. You had one more thought about that?
No, you can go ahead. You summed it up pretty well.
Okay. All right. So one thing that you've done along these lines at the church, and we started Invite too, and this is a question that that I've loved, and I think it's really helpful for people thinking about unleashing potential, is you often will say to people, "How would we do it in the kingdom of heaven?" Like where did this come from, and what's the idea behind it, and how does this play out in terms of leadership for you?
Well, so like I said, I'm not from. I've gone to church all my life. I wouldn't. I'm not from the church world though, as far as staff side and working and all that. And so when I first started working at St. Andrew, it was funny. I had people come up to me and they'd be like, "What you said in that meeting back there was kind of a, there were some sacred cows you touched." And Arthur, our friend, and he told me one time he loved me in meetings because I would go places angels won't go. And I'm like, well, it's because I don't know what the rules are. Like, I've got this kind of ignorance is bliss, like walking around, just kind of asking questions. But one of the things, I was hearing from everybody is, on earth as it is in heaven, like kingdom of, we could, what is, if we bring this here now, what would that be like? And then I would hear people talking about their budget. And they'd say, okay, for student ministries, our budget's this. And that's going to be, the way we did it in prior is we looked at, the budget and, if whatever you spent, we added 3% because we did that across the board and everybody added 3%. So we're going to take what we did and we're going to add, we'll just bank that money and we'll do something with it. And then over time, we'll have enough to start a new ministry or do something else with it. And it was just kind of, I would sit there and go, this doesn't sound like, if we had the unlimited potential of the kingdom of heaven, would we be designing it this way? And they're like, well, no. And I go, well, I know we don't have those resources. We don't have that time. We don't have, all that in place. But, I'm more of a reverse engineer kind of person. Like, let's figure out where we're going. Let's set the goal. And then we'll figure out, what we need to do to get there. The infrastructure we need to build and all the steps. And so, yeah, I think what you're talking about started when I started telling people during the budget time every year. I'd say, okay, start with a clean slate, get with your team. What would it look like to have a choir in the kingdom of heaven? What would it look like to have student ministries or a facilities team or, whatever group it is, whatever ministry? What would it look like to have volunteer adult, congregational care members in the kingdom of heaven? Like, describe that. And
so you've been doing this now for 4 years, 4 or 5 years. So have you seen a shift in some of the staff that have been around that entire time? I mean, how has this kind of played out? You think of a story or two?
Well, I've actually learned some things. So what's funny, I came from, the private sector where going into the budgeting process for a nonprofit it blew my mind. It was like, I don't know. I haven't worked in government education or, public sector, but I imagine it was something similar to that where, here's your allotted money, go. Design within this. Yeah. And so it was like people had the edges of the puzzle and then they had to figure out what to do. And so whenever, where I came from, it was, you've got extra money at the end of the year. That's great. And then where, here it was, if I don't spend this money, I might not get that next year or I haven't done it. So it's created this weird dynamic. On the other hand, it's a nonprofit too, where nobody's giving money to have it sit in a, bank account, or like they're giving it to be part of the mission. And so it's like it was this balance I had to learn. And so, to get kind of at your question, I started looking at it this way and I would pitch that. And what I found is I would say, okay, what does student ministry look like in the kingdom of heaven? And they'd be like, well, we probably have, one more mission trip, or we do. And I'm like, really? Like that's, and it wasn't, or what, like it wasn't student ministries. Everybody thought that way at the start. Like nobody could actually, process what this would look like. And so I started, it was funny. I got a lot better results when I said, what if I told you had $5 million to design your budget? What would it look like? Because I'm trying to get to the end, knowing that we're not going to be able to do that fully. And sorry, I've got Costco refrigerator delivered right now, and of course they come at the wrong time.
Perfect timing. Yes.
So So where was I? Sorry.
$5 million.
Oh yeah. So
yeah.
the $5 million budget, what would that look like? And and then they'd come up with this incredible stuff. They'd fill up the $5 million budget, and I was always amazed at how they did it. But what I realized is they had something tangible. They had something they could actually wrap their head around. None of us can really wrap our head around the kingdom of heaven, and so I started, doing it that way. We would design what that looked like, and then I'd say, okay, we can't do that today. What if we did that? What if we planned on doing that in 10 years, I guess? I don't know. What would it look like today to get there? And how do we still accomplish the things we need to accomplish, but build the infrastructure? Because that's where we should all be going, I think. And so, so that's where it started. But I've taken that approach to really most all the stuff we do at St. Andrew. Like everything I'm a part of, I try to think of, are we doing this for us? Are we doing this for the brand St. Andrew Church, or am I doing this for me? So the way I look at it, or am I doing this for the kingdom of heaven? And I think it really does change. It changes conversations when you're sitting in a room in a meeting and you're talking about something. I promise you, if you're in the church world and you're sitting in a meeting and you're struggling and whatever, if somebody says, okay, how would this be designed in the kingdom of heaven, or how would we be solving this in the kingdom of heaven, you're going to change your conversation, and it's going to help. And people what's funny is the people that can't let it go and go there with you, and then you're like, I don't know what to do here. So
yeah. So, but that's great. So how would you do it in the kingdom of heaven? How does that actually play out? I had a couple more questions, but you've got a fridge to deal with, so we're gonna wrap this. I'd love to hear if you're listening and you have questions for Forrest, you can put them in the comment section on social media. If you want to know more about how to discover your own sweet spot, say you're not living in that, and you want to know, how do I get there? Or say you're an organizational leader, as Forrest is, and you want to help move your organization to more of this kind of positive, kingdom-oriented kind of thinking. We'd love to hear from you about that as well. Forrest, thanks for your time. This is wonderful, because it's the rubber meets the road of how to unleash potential. We're talking about the day-to-day life of what you do at St. Andrew and helping St. Andrew grow in terms of its ministry, and not just the church, but the people on staff and in the congregation as well. So thanks for your time today.
Absolutely. I love talking about this stuff. So if anybody's interested, reach out.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thank you, Forrest. Thanks for coming. We're going to look at a couple of upcoming dates coming up. We have a very important date happening this coming Monday. So in 4 days, we have our next Invite Press title launch. This is a book called Both And by my longtime friend and former ministry partner, Jason Moore. Jason has been working with United Methodist conferences, local churches at all levels around the country for the last 2 years around how to do online worship in the pandemic, and yet still, as live worship has come back, do worship that caters to the needs of the online audience and the live audience. And we, of course, the word audience is probably something he wouldn't use. That's what I just kind of threw out there as I described it. But you've got two distinct situations and two distinct congregations or groups, live in venue and online, and to be able to produce to both of those things in ways that make sense. So that book has already we've been pre-selling the snot out of that thing, and it's already over, I think, 1,300 pre-sales before it's even launched. Very important book and very timely needs right now. So I encourage you to look out for that this coming Monday. Josiah, is there anything else that we've got coming up here in the next couple of weeks that we need to be aware of?
I mean, that was the main thing, is the book launch next week, which is very exciting. Please, be looking out for all kinds of stuff that we're doing here to Invite, as well as Jason Moore on his social media. You'll see a lot of different things next week. But another thing is that Jason is actually coming on the live show next week on Thursday. So be looking out for that, and join us to have Jason kind of share with us about his book and the launch, and how you can get more Jason Moore content in the future.
Awesome. Absolutely. We'll have him also on a webinar coming up in 3 to 4 weeks. We'll have an announcement coming on that fairly soon. you'll have a chance to interact with him and ask some direct questions about what you need to do in your own situation when it comes to live plus online worship.
Absolutely.
All right. Be on the lookout for on inviteresources.com for anything else that's coming up. We're in the process of launching a whole set of new content on the website that's not only the book titles, but blog posts, podcasts, video clips, and new daily content that's going to be rolling out on the website in the coming weeks. So thanks for tuning in today. Until next Thursday at 2 p.m., something completely different. Stay creative, folks.